The Edifice Complex podcast is brought to you by DCM, the Drawing Specialists, Blue Rhythm Commissioning Software, and Sensor Suite, the future of intelligent buildings.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex, the property design and development podcast. Let your hosts Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean keep you up with who is innovating and doing great work, perspective on the adjacent possible, and challenges to the status quo.
Welcome to the Edifice Complex. I'm Robert Bean, your co-host and unofficial mediator, here with my colleague, official agitator, heavy emphasis on agitator, friend, and Yoda of most everything to do with buildings, Mr. Adam Muggleton. Say hello, Sir Yoda.
Hello there. I am the captain of the Rebel Alliance. Just remember that. Okay.
So today's guest, I didn't even actually do a background check because I've known this guy. I don't even know when we first met, but he's just released a new book, and he hangs around with some of the who's who, like guys like Dr. Joe Lstiburek. I think he called you a troublemaker, if I remember correctly, and he has a blog he calls the Energy Vanguard Blog. And they do engineering consulting services, and he's a highly acclaimed teacher. And, I'm not going to tell his whole story because he can. But we're here to talk about Mr. Dr. Allison Bailes III. And Allison, it's so great to have you on the show. Adam and I, of course, have wanted you on for a long time, but you have a book out. So you're doing the book tour, you're like doing podcasts, and you're going to all the conferences. And I got to tell you, when I got the copy of the book and just started to read it, I want to thank you for referencing some of my own philosophies, and I really appreciate that. And of course, that's something that will go to my grave, believing that we should design for people and buildings will follow. And you've captured that in the book. I don't know if I can get this on the screen. Is that possible? Can you
put it in front of your body?
There we go. Right. So house needs to breathe. Allison, you got a great story. Tell us about it. How'd you get to this place in your life?
Okay. Well, before I go there, though, I'll go back to what you said. You don't remember how we met. I'll tell you how we met. I wrote an article called "Naked People Need Building Science" about mean radiant temperature, and you called me up.
Right.
I think it was 2011, and so we've known each other over a decade since that first phone call.
How could you forget a title like that?
And that made it into the book.
Yeah.
Martin Holliday was not a fan of it, apparently. That's okay. Lloyd Alter loves it.
Yeah, Lloyd did. Lloyd ran with it.
For me. Yeah, he definitely ran with it. So anyway, origin story, my Spider-Man story. I was not bitten by a radioactive spider, but I was in physics graduate school, got a PhD in physics, and my thesis advisor built a house. She designed the whole thing herself. She and her husband bought a sawmill, and they cut the lumber, and I got to watch while I was doing my graduate work while she built that house, and I would go out and visit sometimes, and it was really cool, and I wanted to do that. And so a few years later, I was out of grad school. I had a job. I had a tenure track job in Georgia teaching physics, and I bought some land and built a house. And that was number one. It was therapy because I hated the job, not the teaching part. The teaching was wonderful, but my colleagues were absolutely nuts, and I'm glad to be out of there. So it was therapy, and it was a launching pad for my new career. I spent 2 years using the power of self-delusion, because for 2 years I was always just 2 months out. I'm going to be in that house in 2 months. And finally did get into it. Lived in it for 3 years and then got divorced, but it was the most comfortable house I'd ever lived in. Mean radiant temperature was great, although I didn't measure it, but the air tightness and the good solid insulation with the structural insulated panels made a huge difference inside. I could keep it at a lower temperature, air temperature, and it was very comfortable. So that's sort of my origin story. And launching from there, I started a business in the early 2000s doing home energy ratings, load calculations, and then got into home performance contracting. And then when the divorce happened, my mom was dying, my personal life got a little chaotic. That business kind of fell apart. I went to work for another contractor, and then I went to work for the South Face Energy Institute in Atlanta, nonprofit, doing great work. And then in 2008, I left there and started my current company, Energy Vanguard. We do residential HVAC design. I have this blog that I've been writing since 2010. Yeah, that's it.
I like that.
There's a couple of big messages in there. One, thanks for sharing your personal life, and you are actually fairly open with about your past and your life, and I think that really adds a nice human factor, to your story, and because not everybody is willing to share what goes on in the background. So thanks for sharing that. But one of the most important parts of that is that out of all of the stuff that people go through, and everybody has a story, you've built a career and you've built a business, and you've managed to just it's perseverance and just keep going, and that has always impressed the hell out of me with all of our guests, right, Adam? I mean, we've had people that have had amazing lives, not always for the best, but regardless of what sort of goes around in the background, they still end up contributing and making a difference.
Life is a zigzag, right? As long as it's vaguely up and to the right, that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, up and to the right. I like that. And it turns out I think I'm not a very good employee for other people. So that's that's a big reason I'm in business for myself.
Well, we've talked about that too. I remember the best thing my dad ever did for me, and he said it with the most kindest words ever, and that was, "Robert, you're basically unemployable."
Yeah. Get used to it. You're an entrepreneur. You just don't know it yet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you had a head start. I didn't get that kind of guidance growing up. I had to figure it out myself. It took a long time.
So just before we get on to your book, you mentioned like you started off in teaching, and then you sort of went into sort of like the more practical side of life, and the contracting side and the design side. So where do you fall on them two spectrums? What's your preference right now, teaching or doing, for want of a better word?
My preference right now is on the doing side.
Right.
I'm sorry, on the teaching side.
Right.
At age 61, almost 62 now, my body is talking to me. I think back 20 years ago, all the time I spent in attics and crawl space. And I heard a great term the other day. I was at the HVACR symposium in Florida week and a half ago. And one of the speakers there talked about rafter knees. And everybody who spent time in an attic knows exactly what he meant by that. I definitely have had rafter knees. And so, yeah, that's harder to do now. And I have a company. We have 4 employees, counting me, 3 in addition. And so yeah, I'm enjoying this part of the business and sharing what I've learned, and and apparently it's resonating because the book is selling well. The blog is very popular.
Nice. So, Allison, over your career too, like in the process of teaching and sharing, and I don't remember the year, but you had posted some photographs of a bat installation project that just failed on so many levels.
Shocker.
Consequent to showing that photograph, you got a 11 by 14 envelope from a law firm representing the manufacturer of that insulation. And of course, a number of people came to your side, basically telling these guys that you're missing a huge opportunity here to take that, rather than turning it into let's attack Allison, to let's turn this into an opportunity to teach people how to install bat insulation.
Yeah. Tell
us about that, because as you know, like right now, we're trying to get another guest on here who's also received a 14 by 11 envelope from another manufacturer who's completely missing the ball. We don't want to talk about it right now, But when manufacturers sue engineers and educators, it's just the wrong move. It just sends a bad message. And of course, as you know, there was a number of people that got on your side, many people who were influential, basically said, you continue with that, we'll never specify your stuff again. Tell us about that experience, because there's a lesson there.
Yeah, that was very interesting. That was about a year into my blogging career, so 2011. And I wrote an article. I think it was called something like a visual analysis of fiberglass bat insulation, or failures of fiberglass bat, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was basically just a bunch of pictures of fiberglass bats installed very, very poorly. And I wrote the article quickly. I just took all the pictures from one house that I visited, which meant they were all from the same manufacturer. And a couple of years ago, I wrote an article saying, what I would have done differently if I were writing that article again. I would have taken pictures from different houses, different manufacturers, and it wasn't the manufacturer at all.
Right.
So that was something that I could have avoided altogether, but it did get a lot of publicity for the Energy Vanguard blog. That's how I met Lloyd Alter. And as you said, a lot of people came to my defense and wrote letters and emails, and they even called because I published the lawyer's letter. It was a very nasty letter. It
was a nasty letter.
It was really, it was harsh.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, we think you could do better. Well, please take those off and change the article or something. It was, we're coming after you. They didn't sue me, but they did all but that, it seemed like.
Well, I wrote their president and I said, I don't know who's in your human resources that hired the lawyer, probably somebody with an MBA. And that's just caveat on that. I know lots of good MBAs, but sometimes these young guys want to make a reputation and they'll pick an example, you in this case. And I said, you need to fire that person. That one lawyer working for that manufacturer, trying to make a name for himself, did more to destroy the goodwill of that manufacturer than anybody. Not you, not the contractors that saw it, not anybody that was associated with the project, but the lawyer did.
Yeah.
And shame on him, and shame on whoever hired him, and shame on whoever gave him the go-ahead to send that letter. And I'm going to use the Edifice complex here to get on a soapbox. So if there's manufacturers that are listening and you want to pull that kind of a stunt, we'll use our own public relations to defend those that are doing stuff like you were doing and other people that are doing it, because you're drawing attention to something that needs to be talked about and it needs to be improved. And that doesn't happen without actually turning the rocks over. Right?
It's classic bullying, right? The greatest untapped power in the world is gross aggregate demand, right? What I mean by that is when not individuals, but when people en masse change their taste or mind on something, it's over. See, BlackBerry. How many BlackBerry? You got a BlackBerry right now? No. Because en masse, everyone went, you know what? That's not good enough anymore. It's the same thing. This is the thing that manufacturers and big firms fear. Google, right? At some point, we might all decide Google's just too horrific and we're going to do something else. That's over for Google, right? So they will do everything in their power to stop that happening, including cease and desist letters. This is no different, right? You're pointing out something that's objectively true, and rather than respond with high integrity and try and fix something, they went straight for the hammer to the head.
Yeah.
Right? Yep.
That's a shame on them.
And that's just corporate bullying through and through.
Absolutely. That's property power and corporate bullying.
Society as a whole, I think, is done with corporate bullying. Yeah. And I know in the engineering community, and I've written about this before, is that you start suing engineers and educators, there's no effing way that they're going to ever show your product again. No. And anytime the opportunity comes up, they're going to badmouth you, whether you like it or not. So any of the manufacturers that are listening, pay attention, because we will make life difficult for you.
You right? Go for our guy. We're coming like flying monkeys for you.
Absolutely. I mean,
Now,
there is some sorry, I don't want to dominate this, but I got tricked.
Got him going now.
I actually lost my shit. I said I just couldn't believe that was happening. That's why I wrote their CEO and told him to fire the lawyer. But I ultimately, there's got to be some level of professionalism because that creates, some level playing ground. But when it comes to things that are not done properly or not communicated properly, and somebody draws attention to it, that's just a flag that says, okay, we can do better. Let's look at this collectively as an industry, and let's change the way things are done so that people benefit from it.
Yep. And they did come around in the end. So after a few days of being pummeled by all that bad publicity, I got a letter, an email from the CEO, and he apologized for the way they had behaved. So they did come around, but without all that publicity, they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
that's the lesson, right? The only way to beat a bully is to stand up to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we like doing that.
The power of social media, right? And collective communication.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we really wanted to get you on today was to talk about your book. So yes, I love the title because it sort of poses a question. A house needs to breathe, or does it? So when I first saw that title, I thought, of course it does. It did. Your title did to me exactly what it was supposed to do. It made me look at it both ways. So, why the book and why the title? And how did you get to that title? Let's start with that.
Okay. So the title comes from my having to listen to many builders tell me that over the years. We shouldn't seal up a house too tight. A house needs to breathe. So that statement and that context comes from the point of view of air tightness. They pushed back on the when the codes were coming in and requiring blower door tests, and they said, oh no, we shouldn't do all this. Look what happened in the 70s when we made houses tight and people got sick and people died because of bad indoor air quality. Well, no, that's the wrong answer. So that and I'm not shy about putting the answer out early. You don't have to go far in the book. I think it's page 23 where I actually say that in the book. Now, that doesn't mean that there are some. Some people say a house needs to breathe, and I say okay because they mean it in a different way. I'm not crazy about using the word breathe for houses or buildings in either sense, but if they're talking about the moisture movement through the building enclosure, breathable materials, and but that's not really the right word in my opinion. I think we should say a house needs to dry, right? Things are going to get wet, and they need to be able to dry out when they do get wet. Moisture needs to be able to pass through, which is not exactly the same as breathing. So since it's confusing, let's just drop the word breathe from buildings and stop anthropomorphizing buildings that way. So here's two other things on that. So number one, one common retort is houses don't need to breathe. The people inside them need to breathe. Mm-hmm. And there's another great one from a guy named James Powers in New Zealand who said, if you find yourself inside something that's breathing, get out. You've been eaten.
Jonah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's like when we hear people say like radiant floor heating provides the same level of comfort as the sun. And I always say, if these floors are as warm as the sun, get the F out of your house. It's on fire.
Yeah. Wow.
That story reminds me of one of my early mentors. He used to say to me, don't let the moisture in, but let it out anyway. Right? So he's saying seal it up, but don't lock it in, is what he's basically saying, I guess, there. Is that where you sort of land?
Yeah, well, so the book isn't just about this idea of
Yeah.
breathing and what it means. It's about, the subtitle is An Introduction to Building Science. So
Right.
I've divided the book into three main sections. The first one is start at the end, something that Robert has pounded into my head over the last decade. What design for people and good buildings will follow.
Yeah.
And I put that quote in the book more than once because it's really important. So start at the end. What is it? What is it that the people need from the house? We want comfort. We want a healthful place to live. We want energy efficiency. We want durability. All those, and quiet. So that's where we start. And then I go into the next two sections are about the building enclosure and then the mechanical systems. And I go into detail about moisture flow and airflow and heat flow and talk about different materials and ways we characterize the materials and how do we construct assemblies and enclosures that will control those three flows.
Right.
And then what kind of mechanical systems do we need? And I focus, our practice is all about forced air distribution. I talk about different types of distribution, but I don't go into detail about the hydronic side. Focus on the forced air distribution on the mechanical section.
But that's the dominant sort of solution in North America, right?
Yep. And even with hydronic, you still need air distribution for ventilation. So
you still need outside air, right?
Yeah, and that in itself is an interesting conversation. So sidebar,
yeah,
if when we used to hear people all the time say, well, yeah, like don't use radiant because you're going to need a air system anyway. So then you're going to be duplicating systems. But when you talk to people that specialize in air quality, they say dedicated air systems are the best.
I'm on that train.
And I got to tell you, and again, we understand. I mean, we don't want to talk a whole bunch of here about radiant versus air systems, but I got to tell you, when I got out of school in 1983, that's all we did. I never did an air only system, and I never did a radiant only system. And as Allison pointed out, you still need to ventilate, and you're not going to do that without an air based system. It's just that in my practice, when I was practicing, every time we did an air-based system, it was dedicated. And that's from the day I graduated. Right. And again, going back to people talking about HRVs and HRVs, because I know you talk about that in the book, Allison, and I want to actually talk to you about this, but I tracked down the very first patent filed in the United States was in 1979. And it wasn't for an HRV, it was for an ERV.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the very first HRVs, or energy recovery ventilators, that we used in the 80s, early 80s, 83, was in fact an ERV. It wasn't an HRV.
All right.
Yeah. There you go. There's a little bit of history. Anyways, you do talk, and one of the things I like about the book is a good friend of mine, John Siegenthaler, and Allison, I think you know John or know of
Yeah,
John.
I know who he is. We've never met, but I definitely know who he is. Yeah.
He's written a couple of great books on hydronics, modern hydronics. I see your book very much along the same lines. Like, it's really easy to read. It's not a PhD in thermodynamics or engineering. It's written in a way that, the average person can understand it. And if you don't have, sort of a technical background, it doesn't leave you ignorant still. Like, you still can get a ton of information out of this. And yet it's got enough great information that even the seasoned practitioner, engineer, builder, HVAC contractor can get a lot of good information. So well done on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's like a memoir. So given your work history, and you've finished this book and all the research and thinking that went into that, what would you say, if I gun to your head now, here's a plot of land, build me what you think is the shit, the best thing ever, go. What would that be conceptually?
What climate?
Let's just say EST, sort of like Toronto, New York.
Okay, so cold climate, probably double stud walls. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to either double stud walls or exterior insulation. Well, one
Right.
of the two. I'd want continuous insulation some way. So it'd be one of those two. And depends on my budget as well. If I were doing, a lower budget
Robert's
version,
paying, you've got loads of money. Go.
loads of money. Okay, then
Yeah.
I would put insulation on top of the roof deck, and if I had an attic, it would be a conditioned attic then.
Yeah.
So basically, perfect wall, perfect roof, insulation on the outside, control layers.
What sort of levels are you insulating that to?
For New York, Toronto, I like Building Science Corporation's, what is it, 5,
60,
10,
40,
20, 40, or was
Right.
it
60 in the roof.
5 slab, 10 for the foundation walls, 20 for the above grade walls. No, it can't be 40.
No.
No, I'm low. It's 60 on the roof, I think.
Yeah, 60 on the
40
roof.
on the walls, 20 below grade, and then 10 or 5 under the slab.
Okay.
And it's a good rule. It's a good rule to use.
Yeah.
For that climate zone, for sure.
And you can't go wrong right there. There's lots of wiggle room.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the insulation. What about services like heat and cooling, ventilation? How would you handle that?
I would go with the inverter-driven heat pumps, and air distribution is what I'm used to. So I'd put in air distribution system. I live in a 61-year-old house, and when we moved in, we changed out the HVAC systems. We ripped out the furnace and air conditioner. I put in an inverter-driven heat pump Mitsubishi system with 2 air handlers in the attic, in the conditioned attic, and designed all the ductwork. And it's very quiet. It's very efficient. And it keeps the house comfortable. Even a 1961 house with 2x4 walls with R11 at best, maybe R7 in the walls.
Ooh.
Single pane windows with storm windows.
Ouch! Ouch!
Yeah. Well, we're in Georgia, not Canada. So.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, so you've not got a hard winters, right? So that's a good segue. I was on your blog today because I am king of the nerds, and there was a great piece you wrote. I'm not sure how old it was, about how your heat pump system was really undersized. It was sized for 65% of the load, and it still sort of cut the mustard. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's a recent article because over Christmas we had some really low temperatures. We get down to minus 14 at the low,
Right?
minus 14 Celsius, which was 7.
It's a balmy day up here.
Yeah. I don't know if it's balmy anywhere at minus 14, but it was our once a decade single digit Fahrenheit temperature weather.
Right.
And yeah, as you said, the heat pump, according to the numbers from the manufacturer and from my load calculation, it's the heat pump is sized for about 65% of the load. And even with that, though, the lowest temperature we got on the coldest day was 63 degrees, and it got up to 65 or 67 later that day. So it
were people
it
in the house
performs really
uncomfortable?
well.
Did your wife find it uncomfortable? I mean, obviously
No,
you're sensitive to it, right? But
yeah, no, we were all fine. I had a couple of space heaters ready to go, but I didn't use them except when I took a shower. I think I used them a couple times. So yeah, that's worked really well. And also last summer we had some well above our design temperature hot weather, and it worked. It's not as undersized on the cooling as it is on the heating. I think it's like 12% undersized there. And we kept close to the set point.
I saw that graph as well. That was a very very nice graph, actually. Very stable.
Yeah.
It's interesting because in sort of like a temperate climate like the UK, there's a massive push to heat pumps, but obviously there's a distrust because it's an unknown thing, right? It's a new thing. But I'm a big fan of undersizing things, says the guy who's never been sued before. Touch wood. But, there's this, when you oversize things, the efficiency just goes out the window. You don't get sued, to be fair, right? But so the efficiency your heat pump must be working in must be in a pretty good zone there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have not measured that because I haven't measured the temperatures and airflow to be able to see how much heat I'm moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's it's pretty efficient. The house is not as efficient as I am going to make it because we have the whole basement to do. The basement's basically uninsulated right now, and where most of our air leakage is coming from. Well, a lot of it anyway. A lot of it's come from the above grade walls too. But yeah, it'll get more efficient as I make the house more efficient. Another thing about undersizing, a lot of people want to oversize, even with modulating equipment, which is crazy because there's so many pieces of equipment out there. Modulating pieces of equipment are oversized so that they're always running at the bottom end. You've got no benefit from the modulating equipment when you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone told me something like 80% of equipment you sort of come into in a building is operating outside of its efficiency envelope. Now I'm older, I'm actually on board with that. I think empirically I've seen that just about everywhere I've gone.
Yeah.
Which is not the point, right? The point is right sizing or undersize. The other thing I liked in your blog, and I'll get off this then after that, is the fact that you mentioned that, all right, I've undersized this as 65%, but I'm going to increase the efficiency of my envelope and the integrity of my envelope to meet that level of sizing, right? Because as you improve the quality of the envelope, that sizing factor becomes less of an issue, which is a really important point, right? You can improve the leakage rate through your envelope. Right now, it's knowing what to do and having someone to do it is the problem, I guess, right? It's all right for three nerds here having a conversation, but
absolutely. Well, I'll give you an example. So, Allison, I don't know if you know, but we just finished. Well, we're 95% complete here, but it was a farmhouse. It was built in the 70s, and it was brought out here onto this property, and we, had our a friend of mine. We've had Amelia on and Emily, and she does the aero barrier. And so when our seal test, this thing had, I think it was 15 ACH 50. Like you could blow from one side of the house and then you could feel it come through the house on the other side. After 9 hours, after all the things that we've done, and keep in mind, this is without the new windows in, this is without the flooring down, no baseboard, without the puck lights in, but everything else gasketed and sealed to the best that we could. We took it down from 15 down to 3.6.
Wow.
That's
exponential.
Phenomenal reduction in infiltration. And we'll have to do a post. So then we had that was during the year. And so that was, like I said, 9 hours we ran that spray into the building to seal up as much as we can. That was an awesome experience. And then now since that time, the puck lights are in, all the new windows are in, all the flooring's down, the baseboards are in and caulked. Our goal was if we could get it down to 2.2, something like that, I would be ecstatic. So we'll do a post test and we'll talk about it the next time we, have a meeting about building science. But the sealing techniques that are available to seal up older houses, like it's not low cost, but the benefits are huge.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Did you say you used aero barrier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great system. You can dial in whatever number you want. With existing homes, you have to be. There's a lot of prep work that goes into it. Either get everything out of the house, which if you're doing a full remodel and or between occupants, when one person moves out, another person moves in. You can do it a lot easier, but you have to cover things up because once you turn the thing off, that stuff settles out and it gets all over everything.
Yeah. So Emily, they came up with a great solution for that, and what we did is we ended up hiring somebody who did asbestos removal.
Oh.
And those guys specialize in covering things up, and they did just a kick-ass job. And we had maybe an hour of cleanup after it was all said and done.
Oh,
That was it. Yeah.
So would you share the cost on that, or cost per square foot? I mean, how expensive was it?
We'll have to be careful here because Emily's a friend of mine, and this was a pilot project for me and doing really old homes. So I'd prefer not to talk about the price because
is it something a normal person could do though? I mean, not a big baller like you.
no, anybody can do it. I mean, you're any homeowner that wants to do an improvement on their house. But as Allison knows, that there's a sequence of things that need to get done first.
Yeah.
Before you're ready, because there's no point bringing in a technology like that unless you just have to get the home ready for it. So we spent a lot of time detailing the penetrations that went into the attic. We spent a lot of time on all of the plating because we had access to the bottom plates. We had access to the exterior because we did a lot of caulking and sealing from the outside in. So there's just for this place, all in all, so we're probably close to, I don't know, maybe 3,600 square feet of developed floor area, maybe 4,000. And we did probably 2.5 days, 3 days of prep work.
All right. So something, if you were considering a retrofit of your house, like a big re-up of it, and you were going to stay there, that's the time to think about doing this sort of thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you get, I would say, one of the biggest bangs for your buck is to be able to reduce the leakage in your house. It has so many benefits, and as Allison, as you know, in terms of controlling the flow of moisture, temperature, noise, particles, whatever. You get a big bang.
Yep. The Edifice complex will continue in just a moment.
Can you find the drawing and supporting documents you need in less than a minute? Now you can with Echo. It's simple. Just type what you're looking for and press enter. Echo knows your building. Speak with a drawing specialist today. Ask about our special offer of painless onboarding plus 6 months free with Echo. Visit podcast.thedsoffer.com. That's podcast.thedsoffer.com.
And now, back to the show.
Back to your book, Allison. What about in terms of controls technology? Because controls technology is getting more sophisticated and cheaper. We got internet integration with that now. Is there any insights there in your book about how that plays in?
No, I didn't really talk much about that. I'm not completely with Lloyd on this, but I'm kind of with Lloyd, who wrote an article in praise of the dumb house.
I'm a big believer of passive dumb shit. Excuse me. Dumb things. I'm a big fan of myself, as you can tell. Dumb things. But, I carry on. I'm on board with this.
Yeah. I mean, so I didn't talk a lot about, fancy controls and things, because and smart houses, we have some very good equipment, but, I organized the book the way I did because that's how I see it. What is that people need most of all? And then let's start with the building enclosure, because you got to do that first. And like in my case, if you can't do all the building enclosure first, then you got to get new equipment, at least size the equipment smaller so that it will be ready when you do make the enclosure improvements. So, and just focus on the basics. Don't make it harder than it has to be. Keep it simple.
I'm a big fan of that. I think Peter Simmons said that on one of our podcasts. He talked about, the mistake a lot of people make with sustainability and green buildings is they stick too much controls, too many sensing points, and it's not that complicated, right? This is why I'm a big fan of natural ventilation. It's self-regulating if you do it right. It meets demand exactly, not approximately, exactly, right? And there's no controls or interfaces or electrical power required if you do it right.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that's the big if, right? That if is about a mile wide and 10 miles deep. But, the simplicity of that, right? Self-regulation. It's the difference between a roundabout or a turning circle, I think they call it in North America, and a set of traffic lights at a crossroads, right? So a set of traffic lights at crossroads. Metal, production of the things, power, maintenance. It's a cost orgy, right? But does it employ people? Oh yeah, that's basically a version of basic income, right? But
yeah, especially the auto body shops that do repairs
Yeah.
on the car crashes.
but if you've got a roundabout or a turning circle, that is a self-regulating device, right? You can sponsor the middle, it's a flower arrangement by Honda or whatever, right? But people come up to that, it self-regulates. When it's quiet, it's quiet. When it's busy, it regulates people onto it. There's no power, no maintenance, apart from the grass. So that's passive versus active, right? That's how I see that.
Yeah, I like that example.
I should be married to Beyonce.
Well, you know, it's funny, Alan, because we've talked about this before, and
Yeah.
I've been up and down the technology ladder, and I remember like when we were still practicing, and you know, most of our clients were other engineers, and they would come to us, and when we started to talk about the control stuff, and they would started going down the path of interconnected interface, all, fuzzy logic, blah, blah, blah. And I know all of that shit, right? But in my world, and Adam, you know what a thermostatic radiator valve is, and Allison, you would know that too, right? But it's spring driven and it's got refrigerant in it. It knows how to do a phase change without telling it to do a phase change, and the spring never fails, right? So when we went up the right, when we went into the technology, and this was back in the days when Johnson had the Medicine system, and they introduced it, and we taught modems and all that kind of crap, and we had nothing but headaches. We became programmers and IT technicians and telephone communication experts, and none of it was contributing to the benefit of the occupant. And I remember the day when I made a big decision that I said, that's it, I'm done. No more. I don't want a relationship with my thermostat. I want a relationship with my guitar and fishing rods. And most of my clients, the same thing, right? Except if they had grandkids, they wanted a relationship. But calling up their thermostat to talk to it,
yeah.
Okay, well, that's another soapbox. But I got to tell you, when we got away from the high technology, went to basic controls, and if we could use something that had springs in it and refrigerant that would go through a phase change, like a thermostatic regulator valve, that's what we did. And even up until 2019, when I shut my practice down, we had really nice, like multi-million-dollar homes, big clients, big ticket homes, big ticket toys. We were able to convince them to use a thermostatic radiator valve in the zones that we had. It's technology that goes back to the 40s. It worked in the 40s. It worked in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, and it'll keep working for the next 100 years.
Yeah. There's BMS controls engineers now getting hammers and driving to your house right now. I'm going to get that guy.
Yep. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, we do have modulating equipment that has computer boards in it and all that stuff, and I like that level of complexity. But yeah, I think Albert Einstein said it best when he said, everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing I liked on your blogs I was reading today is I'm a big fan of IAQ and IEQ, and that's what I want to talk about next. But it's the measurement, right? To sum up what Robert's saying, I'm a fan of dumb solutions, but knowing what's going on, right? Are my dumb solutions working? That's really what I want to know, right? So let's talk about Robert's design ethos, right? Design for buildings, design for people, right? So that for me, that whenever I hear that, I always think IEQ, IAQ, designing around those metrics. Have you got any insight on that from your design work?
So in my house, we have 2 aware element IAQ monitors that monitor temperature, relative humidity, chemicals, VOCs, which could be anything. It spikes when I open a bottle of scotch. And PM 2.5 and carbon dioxide. I mostly watch the carbon dioxide. That's what I have on the display on those 2 monitors. But every once in a while I'll look at the PM 2.5, and our house is pretty good on PM 2.5, even though it's an old house. I also, whenever I go somewhere, I take this guy with me.
Yeah,
I have one of them, and I do exactly the same. I'm glad to see that's a healthy 675.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting to watch the number go up and down with number of people, and also the outdoor temperature.
Yeah.
On the really cold days, it'll be in the 400s.
Yeah.
Because we get more stack effect. Because we're about 8.5 C8 ACH 50 here in my house, which it probably was 15 ACH 50 before anything happened a decade ago when this attic got spray foamed. But it's 8.5 now, and I'm trying to get it down to 5 when I do the basement. So anyway, IEQ monitoring. Yeah, we in our residential HVAC design work, we on every job that we can, we will spec MERV 13 filtration. And sometimes people ask about monitoring. We don't usually say anything about monitoring in our reports, but maybe we should add that. So yeah, I mean, we do MERV 13, which is the best compromise between the level of filtration, and the pressure drop, cost. Yeah.
Do you find? I mean, I'd like people understand temperature because they've been living with that in their houses for years, right? And a lot of people understand humidity. I'd like to get sort of like CO2 as another metric in there that was a generalized metric that people understood. Do you have any pushback when you start talking about stuff like that?
Pushback? No, I haven't had pushback. Usually people are interested, and people who haven't heard about it or thought about it are interested. It's interesting though, when I go to when I travel, I take this. When I'm sitting down at the airport, I'll put it out in front of me. When I'm on the plane, I put it in the seat right in front of me, and almost nobody ever asks about it. It's like, whoa, what's he measuring there? I guess they're just suspicious of me when they see it, and they're afraid to ask. I don't know.
I always use it. So I stay in a lot of 5-star hotels. Yeah, my life's awful, I know. But I always take that with me. And looking at like the RH and the CO2 and these things is really telling. Because my theory on hotels is they are like at the bottom of the pile, right, in terms of quality of construction. No one cares. Literally no one cares. Yep. And you can see where like the corners have been cut on latent cooling or things aren't working properly. It's just a disaster. So my experience with CO2 monitoring, I did what you did. I pulled the trigger and I bought a few of those monitors, and I bought it home, and I was horrified at how bad the CO2 levels were in our house. Yeah. I mean, it was illuminating, to say the least. It's changed how we operate.
It doesn't take much to get the CO2 up. I mean, you take 2 or 3 people in a relatively small room, and that it can easily double in minutes.
Yes.
Yep. And if you're not monitoring or being aware of it, I mean, at some point the levels get high enough that it starts to feel stuffy, and you just like the air, you can sense the quality is not good. But you can prevent a lot of that from ever getting that high by just being aware.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, last week in Florida, I was staying after the conference. I was staying with somebody down there, and we were in the bedroom. My wife and I were in the guest room, and with the door closed, and it went up to close to 3,000 parts per million.
Ooh.
Night. I said, "Oh man, need to get some ventilation in this house."
Yeah, that's not good. See that is not good. The other one I use it on, like I'm in the plane and you run it. So like I do a lot of long haul flights, and over that flight, man, that thing the RH goes down. And oh my goodness. And you're thinking, is this healthy? It's not, is the answer.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back, like if you go back again to the 70s, like we started out talking about, a house needs to breathe, and I was around, fortunately, early enough that when Canada's R2000 program, which Joe Lstiburek was involved in, and we had buildings that, we were trying to meet the R2000 requirements, which was 1.6 ACH 50, 1.6, and we had buildings that were difficult, moisture problems, air quality problems, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we were introducing air-to-air heat exchangers. So we know that So when Allison, when you're talking about 3,000 parts per million, and the house needs to ventilate, the house needs some ventilation in this home. Where that comes from is the ventilation system, and so having. I mean, in Canada, that's standard practice to have a heat recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator. But in the U.S., it seems like those terms are new.
Yeah.
Like, what is that all about? I mean, the first patents were filed in 1979. We've been using them since that time. But why in America does everybody treat these devices as if they're brand new?
Because we have a lot of builders who want to do, code minimum and keep the code from advancing too much. Here's an example. In Georgia, 3 or 4 years ago, we went through the process of updating our code. We went from the 2009 to the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code. And the IECC, the 2015 IECC, requires for our climate zone here, 3 ACH 50 for air tightness. And if you're below 5 ACH 50 on air tightness, you have to put in mechanical ventilation. So if we had gone with what the code says, every new house would have to have mechanical ventilation in Georgia. But here's what the builders did. And it's not all the builders, but there are enough of them that wanted it that they got it. The air tightness requirement in Georgia is not 3 ACH 50, but 5 ACH 50. And you know where I'm going with this, I think. The mechanical ventilation requirement is now at 3 ACH 50, not 5. So they built themselves a sweet spot. They got to hit between 3 and 5, so they meet the code for air tightness and don't have to put in mechanical ventilation. And if I were a builder building even a 4.9 ACH 50 house, I'd be nervous about selling that to somebody without a ventilation system.
So where was the HVAC lobby guy there? He should have been lobbying like crap for getting mechanical ventilation in every building, right?
Yeah. Builders they're one of the most powerful lobby groups going anywhere. I mean, they just carry a huge stick. And again, Allison, this is going back, and you'll probably remember this. There was a proposal to improve insulation levels, and the lobby groups for the builders managed to get that shut down or delayed at least for a few years. And this is a subject that pisses me off, because when we started to, again, going back a number of years, promote compliance with, say, ASHRAE Standard 55, and our clients would then go to talk to their architects and the builders about being in compliance with ASHRAE 55, and they didn't hear about it. They didn't know anything about it. So our client had to explain it to them that this was something that they were looking for in their project. And the builders would come back and say, well, that's an upgrade. So then I would say, well, hang on a second. If it's an upgrade to the standard, then anything below the standard is a downgrade. And I would say to my clients, how many of you will actually want the downgrade? Like, put up your hand if you want to pay for the downgrade. And that's what people do. They pay for the downgrade whenever it's below the standard.
Mm-hmm. Interesting way of looking at that, actually. So Allison, are you optimistic about the future of house building, or do you see it just being a very gradual improvement?
It seems like it's just going to continue being a gradual improvement. And, I think where things need to go now is the electrification movement. I think we need to decarbonize electricity to the maximum extent possible, and then electrify all our buildings as much as possible, so that we can solve this climate crisis that we're in.
Do you think the capacity is there for that? In electricity capacity, I mean.
I hope so.
Hope's not a strategy, man. You know that, right?
What's that?
Hope is not a strategy.
I know hope is not a strategy, but I just keep working on what I'm doing and letting people know what's going on. And I've got I electrified my house. We had a gas furnace and a gas water heater, and now we're all electric. We had the gas meter removed, I think this is the way to go. And everybody always says, well, you're in Georgia and your electricity is not very decarbonized there. You look at Georgia Power, but number one, electricity is getting cleaner every year. EIA, the Energy Information Administration data show that. And the Rocky Mountain Institute did a study a few years ago, 2020, I think, and they found that in the lower 48 states of the U.S., all but Wyoming at the time would benefit, would reduce carbon emissions by electrifying, by going with heat pump over gas heating.
So should I be buying shares in heat pump firms and electricity generators? Probably, right?
Well, you'd think. I've invested in solar companies twice, and both of them went out of business. So
too early. The right idea too early, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
You made an important statement there, and that was decarbonization of electrical production. A lot of people, when they hear the word decarbonization, they think it's actually at the house, but it's at the source, and that's really important. And just talking about sort of north here in Canada, Adam, as you know, I mean, the oil and gas industry carries a big stick. If you look at power production in Canada, really the two provinces that are the ones that are the worst offenders, it's Alberta, where I'm from, and Saskatchewan. That's basically most of our power is generated by either coal, oil, or gas. But BC is hydro, Manitoba's hydro, Ontario's nuclear and hydro. Quebec is all hydro. Yeah. And out in the Maritimes, it's a mixture of hydro, nuclear, and some oil. But our country is actually, I think almost 70% of our production is through renewable systems, if you include nuclear as a renewable system.
Well, that's happening, right? That's the rebirth, the rebranding of nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all need to be France, says the Englishman. Remember, we fought a 100-year war with France. So, I'm a big fan of France for two reasons. One, French know who they are, and they make no apologies for it. Right? They just know they're awesome, and that's it. If I wasn't a Brit, I'd be a Frenchman all day, every day. Two, 73% of their power is nuclear. So this is an accident of the Second World War policies of General de Gaulle. However, they are a genuine low-carbon economy. Probably in the Western world, the lowest carbon economy. No one talks about that. No one celebrates that. Why is that? I don't get that. Why?
Yeah. I mean, nuclear has a checkered record in some ways. Yeah. Overall, the production has been great, and lots of low carbon electricity over the decades. But a few highly publicized accidents: 3 Mile Island, Fukushima.
The dread factor's high. But I think the technology is changing, and why are we not taking that waste and getting Elon Musk to send it up to ET's back garden and shoot it into space? Why is that not happening? Right? In the 1600s, we all thought the sea was infinitum. We put all our rubbish in that, right? We now know that's not. I'm pretty sure there's a bit more room upstairs in ET's backyard. Why is that not happening? I don't get it. Why does Greta not go, how dare you, but I love Macron? Why is that not happening? I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need solutions. I think one reason that doesn't happen is that the possibility of a rocket exploding and showering that stuff all over the earth.
Yeah, but that's why you shoot it out of New Zealand, which is where most rockets take off for several reasons, right?
Really?
Yes. So New Zealand is a spaceport. There's certain places in the earth where it's really better to take off and land from, or take off mostly, right? So a lot of satellites are fired off from New Zealand. I'm a nerd, right? I read a lot. I'm on planes a lot, and I read a lot of stuff, right? Most of it about Kim Kardashian, but now and again I read something technical, right? And so New Zealand as a future, as a space, as things move to space, like business, war, everything moves to space. New Zealand has a very bright future with that. And one of the reasons is it's very remote. So if things really do go belly up,
But the Earth is an oblate spheroid, and they're closer to the poles, so they're farther from space. You'd think somebody at the places at the equator would be better. They're closer.
At the bottom of the map, right?
That's the physicist talking.
But yeah, there's buildings are cultural phenomenon, right? My example of that is North America is forced air heating and cooling. Where I come from in the UK, only poor people have that. Right, that's a sign of social housing. It used to be in the 70s and 80s in the UK. So like when I moved to Canada, I said to my real estate agent, I want a brick-built house and I want radiant heating. Well, she laughed so hard at that, it was not funny. I didn't get any of that, by the way. So, there's a cultural aspect to it, right? Culture changes slowly. And it's the same, I think, with power generation, right? There is a cultural unacceptance from people our age mostly of nuclear because 3 Mile Island, things like that, right? But yeah, at some point that's got to change. Someone's got to take the lead on changing this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other issue, I live in Georgia, and we are the state, Georgia Power, my electric utility, is building the first nuclear plants in the U.S. since the last ones got canceled in the 80s. And they're years late and billions of dollars more expensive than they projected. And we're paying for it. Now, as a ratepayer of Georgia Power, I'm paying for that. So they still have that problem too.
This is where the world bifurcates, right? So in the Middle East and in China in particular, they are building them like wheat, like by the hundreds, not the tens.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Now, they're using the new, is it theorem? I can't remember, something beginning with T that I can't pronounce, technology. But the point is, they could be low-carbon economies with pretty much solid power supplies, and we're not.
Yeah.
Because we can't build them because of like regulations and corruption and all sorts of reasons and money. They have the ability to power through a lot of that. So, there is going to be a fork in the road. There has been a fork in the road. And I think it's going to become, in a generation or two, something so substantial, it's going to separate winners from losers. And it won't be our problem, it'll be our kids' problem, right? It still could be a problem. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is, we have to stop burning stuff.
Yes.
And that's the root of our problem. And Robert has talked about this for a long time. We need to use low temperature heat for a lot of the stuff that we're using high temperature heat for now. Yeah. And it's good not only to help with the climate crisis, but also it's better for comfort.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then it also enables the efficiency out of the machines that we specify.
Yeah.
Right. And so the people that are listening to this, there's a direct correlation between the efficiency that you paid for and the operating conditions of the system, which you probably had very little to do with.
Correct.
And so we would teach our clients again that, we'll specify the efficiency of the equipment based on the operating conditions that were necessary. And then we're going to hold the architect responsible for making it happen. And that never went over well with the architects. But that's the way it should be. We know what it takes to get low temperatures back in heating and high temperatures back in cooling. We know the enclosure that's required. We know everything about the heat exchange because that's what it is. It's an engineering problem. And then we can specify what's necessary and then hold architects responsible for it because that's what they're for. Not the other way around. We've had such a cluster, when the design community puts such a high emphasis on art, and I get the art part of it, but for far too long, engineers have had to compensate for bad architecture. We've forgotten about vernacular architecture. We've forgotten about the passive solutions. We've made tons of mistakes, and as a result, it's an energy hog. People need to understand that for every energy that's converted in whatever form, if it ultimately goes because people are avoiding discomfort.
Yeah.
And so, and that's why, if we're going to be specifying high efficiency equipment, that we need to enable it and we know everything that's required and that the architectural community has to get on board with this.
Peter Simmons says, congratulations, you're an engineer. You didn't know this, but your job is to clean up architects' mess.
And that's not to slam all the architects, because there are some really good architects and there's a lot of awareness going on. But my God, we still see it today, 2023, the buildings that are coming out for development. And it's like, have you not got the memo? Like, do you not understand what this is all about? You know, they still flaunt bad decisions.
Mhm.
And everybody can see it. You can't hide a 30-story building that's an energy pig.
Yeah.
It's like you can put a brown bag over its head. Like, we can see it. Right?
This is why books like yours, Alison, are really important, because engineers need to be more prolific in the output they produce and getting on the front pages, right?
Yeah.
It's always the architect who's on the front page having the grip and grin with the mayor. Why is it never the engineer? Right? This is why it's on all of us, particularly us of a certain age, to like put stuff out, put thought opinions out, put books out, and really try and get on that front page with the architect, in my opinion. So that's where I am with it. That's another reason we like to do these podcasts and like that, bring people like yourself, you know, give you platforms we can like put things out there, because it's got to be done. It's got to be said, right? What you're writing about is important, and it's sort of, because it's sort of like engineering and you got to be clever. You just got to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
No.
Yeah. The basic ideas are pretty simple. I mean, even the laws of thermodynamics, you know, heat flows from hot to cold, and moisture goes wet to dry, air goes from high pressure to low pressure.
That's it. Most of it is first year high school physics. If you can get that down, you're good, right?
Yeah.
To understand just about everything you need to understand.
But not even all of high school physics. I mean, just a little bit.
So we're coming to the end. Have you got any, what's your next book, I suppose is the first question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm working on some online training to supplement this book, so that you know, people can go in there and you know, get the different ways of learning it, and also go deeper in some areas. So working on that now, and then I don't know. I could go take this book and make a simpler, less expensive version, because you know, $69 US, a lot of homeowners are not going to buy this. You know, they'll see it on the shelf, oh, $69. But if it were $19, then I think,
or a Kindle.
Yeah.
You thought about putting it out in Kindle and making it a bit more affordable?
Yeah, well, I am going to do an electronic copy, and I haven't figured out all the details of that yet, but that's coming this year.
I can help you with that. If contact me offline if you're interested in that. I can hook you up with somebody who can do that really quick and cheaply. Yeah.
Well, I've got a publisher, and I can talk with her about it too. But yeah, I'll talk with you too.
Okay, cool. So we normally finish off with just a quick fire question each. I'll go first as I'm talking. I've stolen this from another podcast, but I don't care. I am a stealer. What are we not talking about that we should be talking about right now in the built environment?
Hot water. When I wrote the book, I have, you know, there's this guy named Gary Klein in California, and Larry Weingarten and some others I call the hot water gurus out there. And they have been pushing really hard on the fact that hot water systems in buildings are terribly designed, and the distribution systems are out of date with the kind of fixtures that we use now.
Correct.
So I finally really dug into that deeply, because I have a whole chapter on it in the book, and I've also retrofitted my house using some of those ideas. And I mean, it's huge. I mean, when I moved into this house, it took 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes and 3 gallons of wasted water to get hot water at my kitchen sink.
Thank you. I've been saying this for so long. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and now, you know, I did a retrofit, and I've written about that in the blog as well. And I get hot water there. You know, it's warm by 20 seconds, 15 or 20 seconds, and it's hot by 30 seconds. It's a huge difference. And in my bathroom, the shower and the lavatory, it's even a bigger difference. So I would say hot water. It doesn't get enough coverage in the world of building science.
100% agree, because also it's a non-renewable resource in a way, right? It's all less renewable than other stuff. Water matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. There's not many substitutes for it. Let's put it that way, right? There's no substitutes for it. So using it well is on us, I say. So I couldn't agree more with that. Robert?
Yeah. So Allison, I would be interested to know if you were given the opportunity to teach a high school class on how to buy a home. What would you say to those grade 12ers?
No, that's a man. How to buy a home? Number one, get a blower door test. Find somebody with a blower door and get a blower door test on the house on it. Before you put money on it, or have it tested. Or see if they've got the test. So understand the very basic stuff, the building enclosure. Be able to go in the house and take a look at the state of the air barrier. If you can get in the attic, take a look and see what kind of holes you see in the basement or crawl space if they have one, and see what kind of holes there are. Take a look at the windows. So get an idea about the building enclosure, and then the mechanical systems. Take a look. Does it have an old inefficient furnace or air conditioner or heat pump? What do the ducts look like? That I've got lots of pictures of things to watch out for, so I would show them those. And just educate them on what does good look like and what does bad look like, and what kind of testing would you want to see?
Yeah. For those that are listening, because we get parents and we get kids that listen to this stuff, just be assured that we have had clients who are gazillionaires build these edifices to their narcissistic egos. They will spend more time researching the plane that they're going to buy, or the yacht that they're going to buy, or the plastic surgery that they're going to have done on their bodies, than they will invest in time and understanding what they're going to live in.
Yeah.
This is a problem that we have in society, is that even the most educated amongst us, the wealthiest amongst us, still don't do the necessary homework to buy a home properly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in grade 12 and you just heard Allison's words, you're smarter than probably some of the top 10 of the smartest, richest people in the world.
That's a really good point, Robert. This is a marketing issue, right? Marketing and advertising have made it fun to investigate the spec of a car, but not a house.
Yep.
That is fascinating. That's a great insight, actually.
Then
Don Draper needs to get on this.
When you think about it, if you think about the value of a plane or a boat or surgery, all of those types of things, and then you compare it to the value of a home, and then where you spend your time indoors and the consequences of those, like you would spend twice as much time if you knew that, looking at what it takes to design a good home, build it, and operate it, right?
You know what, Allison? That's a course that you should do. Like, one of the summary courses around the book should be, this is what a good home looks like. Mm-hmm. Look for this, and this, right?
That's great.
Yeah, okay. So trademark Edifice Complex on that. We'll look forward to some royalties.
All right.
We'll help you with that. We'll co-author an article on that. That's something that should be done, and it should be done at high school level, not after the fact.
Yeah. Okay, Allison, look, thank you for coming on. Congratulations on the book and its success. We obviously promote it, and I'm gonna, as soon as it's over, I'm going online to buy it.
Well, let me say one more thing. I am coming to Canada in March. I'm going to be in Guelph doing a one-day workshop at Eden Energy Equipment.
Michael.
Yeah, Michael Riddler.
Send me some info on that, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, I'll send you the link to the registration page. He set it up for one day, but if there's enough interest, then he was going to set up a second day as well. So full day workshop. I'm basically going to cover the whole book in one day.
Okay, we'll see if we can get some interest on that as well. All right. Allison, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was awesome, and congrats on that book. Well done.
The Edifice Complex will continue in just a moment.
Are you struggling with paperwork, spreadsheet overload, and project management? Then Blue Rhythm is the solution to help you. Streamline your commissioning and project management process. Go paperless. Increase efficiency and save money. Blue Rhythm is commissioning and project management software by practitioners for practitioners, adapting to your workflows and processes, and doing things your way. Blue Rhythm provides painless and fast onboarding by bringing your existing workflows, forms, checklists, and issues logs into Blue Rhythm for you. You can use their pre-built templates to customize your commissioning workflows. And Blue Rhythm can fully handle the transition from your current software platform. Blue Rhythm is secure, scalable, and reliable, backed by amazing support, and accessible 24/7 on any Windows, iOS, or Android device. Why are you still using paper and hard-to-control spreadsheets? Start your free Blue Rhythm account today at bluerhythm.com.
Are we there yet? Yes, we are. The future promised real-time monitoring and control of our buildings, and now that is a reality with Sensor Suite. The only question you need to ask yourself is, how much energy and water is my building wasting each year? Sensor Suite will do the rest. With Sensor Suite solutions, any existing building and equipment can be retrofitted with smart sensors and controls that generate an industry-leading high-resolution data feed, unlocking a level of operational optimization and visibility across your entire building portfolio. This allows analysis and targeted interventions that turn old analog buildings into intelligent, energy-efficient grid resources, allowing monitoring and control at your fingertips through Apple, Android, and Windows devices. Make a difference to the environment and start saving money today. Go to sensorsuite.com or call toll-free 1-855-773-6767.
And now, back to the show.
Here it is, Allison's book, right? That was a good. I like talking to Allison. He's he's a smart guy, but he's very, he thinks deeply about his responses, and he thinks deeply about a lot of things. And but he's put together a great publication, and obviously we're happy to have him on. And I love the fact that, as I said earlier on, that he does share his personal life. He's not afraid to share what's going on in his own.
He's a sharer. There's no two ways about it. And what I like about it is that a lot of PhDs I've worked with, not many, but a few I have, they find it really hard to communicate to like normal people. I mean, you got to talk to me like I'm a Labrador or a brain tumor for me to get it. So, it's like, I'm just impressed that he's managed, because he's a PhD, let's face it, he's got a big brain, right? But he's managed to distill this information in a way that's readable and doable. And because, the target audience isn't other PhDs. This is what I always used to say to PhDs that work for me. Yeah. You're not speaking to other PhDs, you're speaking to normal people. You've got to talk like a normal person. And I think he pulls that off pretty well.
He does a great job of it.
Yeah.
A PhD in physics is not the same as a PhD in underwater basket weaving. I
do not know what you're saying.
It's a different subject matter altogether, but he does a great job. He doesn't get too complicated, and you certainly can. You can describe all kinds of stuff mathematically and talk about the physics of stuff, but he doesn't. He knows his audience, and that's who he talks with. And
I did enjoy researching his blog, because he's got some really just good, honest, open sharing pieces here. Like, this is my house. This is what it was like in the depth of winter, even though I undersized this thing by a factor of. And this was like in the summer. It's that like eating your own dog food stuff. It's like the software person using his own software, right? Yeah. I love that. There's an integrity in that, right? Where, because at some point you might have to own a mistake when you do that, and you just got to own it. Yeah. But so far, I've found him high integrity, and I really enjoyed, seeing how his house has been performing with what he's done, because that's the real measure, right? It's like you've tightened up your house and it's performing.
Oh, it's doing great. Yeah.
So the question is, why wouldn't more people do that? That was a really interesting point you made about people will investigate their car and their plane and their nip and tuck, but for some reason they don't feel they're qualified or have an opinion to go deep on their house spec.
I know, it's so bizarre.
It is weird. I'd never thought of it like that, but that is so true. Even the people with loads of money and all the time still won't do it right. It's like they've been hypnotized. This isn't for you. It's a bit too complicated. You don't know what you're doing, right?
Put their entire faith in the builder, and and think that the code and the builder and the architect are going to take care of their needs. But if you're a rich, well-educated person listening to this podcast, that's the worst thing you can do, is to put your faith into this organization. That's like putting your faith when you go to spend whatever, $1.5 million, $2 million on a plane, and you have not done any homework. Like, you're gonna learn as much as you possibly can, or if someone's gonna do surgery on you.
Look, I'm looking to buy a car, obviously a ridiculous car, because that's who I am. But I've been researching the what's it's out of this for 3 months already.
Right.
I didn't put that much thought into the house I'm living in right now. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing.
Right. So it's the homework is necessary no matter what you're doing, and the home obviously has major consequences because you're spending more time there, right?
Well, at a minimum, you're spending a third of your life in bed in your bedroom, right? Yeah. That's before you eat, leisure time, hanging out with your family. So it's got to be 40 to 50% of your time is in your home, right? And if you're working from home, it's another level above that, right?
Well, you think about, some of the clients that we've had, these guys will go, and girls go buy a Maserati or a Ferrari or whatever, and they'll talk to you about, at length, the work that they did to get that car, whether it was a brand new one from the factory, like flying over the factory, right? Getting the tour, right? Going on the test track, right? Driving some of the cars, some of the models, right? They get to go through all of the specifications, what they're looking for, right? But they don't do that with houses, but yet the houses,
most people buy a house based on a 30-minute walk round on a Saturday afternoon on an open house.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. That is the pressure of the real estate agents put on you, right? So just say you've wandered into this open house. You think, I like this. You go in, you think, I'll make an offer. Then they lock you into this like psychological jiu-jitsu game of, well, you better get that offer in by so-and-so. And, you better up it a bit. And, I think I can talk about it. It's just, yes, which is unbelievable bullshit.
Real estate people and used car salespeople are right in the same cloth. They were like born together. They're twins.
It is nuts. But just the other thought I was sort of had at the end of that was like, we need more people like Allison, like more engineers putting out books about how to and why to's, and it's not that complicated, really. The more of that out there, I'm looking forward to the day where you see the engineer and the architect on the front page of these glossy mags, shaking hands with the mayor, right? Yeah. So he's the architect. I want the engineer to crash that show. Yeah. That's one of my opening riffs when I talk about life safety systems. I say, you will never see the front page of an engineering magazine where this is the guy that designed the best staircase pressurization system. And he's shaking hands and so on. Never going to happen, right? Yet that thing might save 20 or 40 people's lives one day. That person gets no acknowledgement, right? And it's normally a mid-level person. That's the other joke I say. You will never see the rock star professional engineer design the life safety systems because there's no glory in that, right? They're doing the super complicated, heat recovery system. It's glory in the wrong places, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Well, I'm glad we had Allison on. He's got the book is a great book. Push it again. House Needs to Breathe. As I said, it's well written. It's for everybody, really. And he made the comment about homeowners wouldn't pay $70. my message to the homeowners that are listening to this, or those who are going to buy a home, if you're going to spend, pick a number, I don't care, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, even $300,000, $60, $70 for a book.
That's a rounding error.
Yeah, it's like.
Do you know what that is? That's 2 lattes, a pan of chocolate, and an orange juice after you've been to the open house.
Yeah, like buy the book. Like it's just people's value systems. We didn't get a chance to talk about here, but at one time I used to monitor where people spent their discretionary income. Yeah. Adam, people spend more money on their pets, outdoor furniture, moving. Right? Cosmetics. I used to call it the poo and the goo. The real competitors to engineering is the poo and the goo. It's the veterinarian bills and the cosmetic creams.
Yeah.
Spend tens of thousands of dollars, for, fur-lined, stuff for Fifi and Fido. And the cosmetic industry sees, people coming from a mile away.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. That is.
And I don't know about you, but the people that I love in my life don't need cosmetics. I like them just the way they are. I get it why they use it, and then as far as pets go, my God. Well, let me just put it this way. People who are destitute on their last dime renting houses can't make the rent, but they will spend all kinds of money to put food in the dog. And if there's a vet bill that needs to come up, as many as thousands of dollars for a vet bill, they'll keep their pet alive. Yeah. Now, I get I'm 62 years old. I've had lots of dogs and pets. I get all of that stuff, but people value those things more than their own indoor environment. It's insane.
No, it's insanity. It's bad priorities. We got to sort this out. But yeah, I'm with you. It's nuts. But anyway, mate, that was interesting. Whenever we have one on houses, like residential, I do come off a little bit depressed because you wind up in this. It's just so crazy. The skewed values and decision making and spending. It's just all over the show, right?
Yeah. There's another guy, David Sweet, and he works for Takeo, and he built himself the quintessential high-performance home. He has since sold it because he moved.
Right.
But his journey through that whole learning experience, and they actually recorded it. You can actually see the recordings online. They did I think it was a month-by-month progress report about what went on, and it was an alpha omega analysis of the project. And so if anybody's listening to this, buy Allison's book. It's a great book, but then also go on and learn about David Sweet's experience, because it's a great message as well. So
if I can find the link to that, I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay, man. I shall see you on the next one.
All right, Adam. Always my adventure.
All right. Take care. Bye.
You've been listening to the Edifice Complex podcast with Adam Muggleton and Robert Bean. To access show notes for this episode, visit edificecomplexpodcast.com. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes. See you next time.